First step to make a sauce piquante is to make the roux. But if you're lazy, you can get ready-made roux in a jar. Nonk Chauz does not approve of doing this. This is a 16-quart pot. Probably a little bit undersized for the volume of sauce piquante. And we don't have to wait very long to put in the onions because the roux is already made. So as soon as it gets heated up and starts to stick on the bottom, we're gonna put the onions and start to brown the onions and bell pepper. So this is 3 medium to large onions and 1 large bell pepper. You gotta brown that for about 15 minutes. You might have to add a little bit of water to make it simmer. There's no might. Definitely gonna have to do it. Crank the heat up a little bit. We want it to cook today, not tonight. Now, think about this. You want to let it sit after it's cooked. It's better overnight, for at least a couple hours, to let all the seasonings mesh. That's a lot of onions. It's probably too many, but I like onions. And you stir this pretty constantly for 10 to 15 minutes. Having a little bit of problem with it sticking too much, so I'm gonna add just a little bit of water. Not that much. It's good to have a flat bottom spoon. That way you can scrape that bottom. Pretty much at high heat right now. Add a good bit more water. The goal here is to brown the onions more or less, or let them cook down a little bit. Next, we're gonna add the rotel. This is probably more than the recipe called for, but I like rotel. Put everything, put the juice and everything. Take the lid out though. I'm gonna raise the temperature, stir in the rotel, then add some seasoning. So this is some minced garlic, about a tablespoon and a half, and a tablespoon of hot sauce. All our seasoning, some garlic powder, about a tablespoon of garlic powder, some parsley, about a half a teaspoon of salt. Stir that in. That's the list of seasonings I just put in there. Yeah, a little bit of cayenne pepper. I didn't put the bay leaves yet. I'm gonna stir that in and add the meat in a second. Got 3 pounds of beef stew meat and 4 pounds of pork. 3 pounds of pork underneath this. You have to put the pork or else it just doesn't taste right. And I'm gonna have to do this off camera. I got roughly 5 to 6 pounds of meat. Beef and pork. I couldn't find a Boston butt or shoulder, so I just used pork tenderloin. And you want to let this cook for about 30 minutes. You might have to add a little bit more water so that it simmers. But the idea here is to get the meat to absorb all the seasoning. and to brown the meat as well. Notice I have a flat bottom spoon. I had to switch to the metal. Added the rest of that bottle of water. Ultimately, I want that water to cook out. But I'll put the lid on for now, just to keep the heat in and get it nice and cooked. And I'll crack the lid or remove it later when I want it to cook down. Because we got a lot of tomato sauce that's got to go in here too. I'll stir it in about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, yeah, Justin Wilson would like that. About 25 minutes in, and something else that I like to do is turn the pot every now and then. That way it doesn't stick in one place and it's easier to manage. Partially covered. At the 35-minute mark. Simmering pretty nice. Forgot to put the bay leaf. Recipe calls for 4, but I like bay leaves. We're gonna put the mushrooms. I go ahead and add the water because it's gonna cook out anyway. Two cans of tomato sauce. And I like to put some stewed tomatoes in there as well. Also forgot this, tomato paste. But I might have to put that off camera because it takes both hands to do it. Now to add the sugar. It don't take much, just for a little bit of flavor. And then we'll cook. We'll cook on about a 3. We're not going, it's not a race at this point. Just gonna cook for 3 to 4 hours, stir every 10 minutes or so, and then let it sit for a couple hours. About an hour in, got the temp set pretty low. Stirring every 10 minutes. Gotta keep the bottom from sticking. All that red's gonna cook down to brown. And we gotta cook all that acid out of the tomato sauce, and the tomatoes will cook down too. Leave that lid cracked and start to cook that water down. It's been 3 hours. It's cooked down quite a bit. A little bit of trouble with the pork sticking to the bottom and the roux. So the pork tenderloin broke up a little more than I wanted to. And that could be avoided by using a shoulder instead of a tenderloin. And now all that's left is to let it just cook on low for a little while longer. And it should be ready to eat. Over some rice. But it's best to let it sit for a few hours so that the flavors properly set in.